On your behalf, therefore, let me welcome first His Excellency Babatunde Raji Fashola. You know him. This is an esteemed Nigerian. He is a mover and a shaker. He has had everything that qualifies him to be exactly what Lumumba has described: a senior advocate of Nigeria, a former minister of the Federal Republic. Now, by today's standards, he would have been more than a coordinating minister, because you all remember how many portfolios he had. And most of all, a former governor of this state, the foremost state in Nigeria and in Africa, Lagos State. Your Excellency, the other day, we were treated to why Lagos is number one, not only in Africa, but also in the global south. And I know that the geopolitical dimensions of what Lumumba has presented here would be Lagos as the beginning. So let me invite our first discussant, and I'm coming to you now. We'll give each discussant 10 minutes. I know that you have prepared a great deal here, but of course, we trust you. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, please welcome His Excellency. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Prof, for that very stimulating intervention. I think that I will start from the end. And in the end, you said we must resolve. And some of those resolutions, perhaps, in my view, respectfully overlook the world that we now live in. A globalized world where no nation is an island anymore. But in starting from the end, you alluded, I think, twice to whether we were cursed or whether we were bewitched. Those thoughts have crossed many minds, mine included, but I don't believe in witchery or sorcery. I believe that we can achieve everything we set our minds to. And I think the first resolution I want to propose here is whether we can agree on what the Nigerian dream looks like. Can we agree? What is the Nigerian dream and what does it look like? And perhaps from there, if we have a measure of what the dream looks like, we can have an agreement on what success will look like. So that when we get to the destination of success, we can really say and thump our chest that we have hit here. Of course, success is not static, so we can redefine and set new goals. But those are important resolutions I want us to ponder about whether we can reach. Of course, the topic itself and the theme calls upon us as the leader of this continent to rise. And I want to dramatize that in a little way, just to perhaps contextualize the point I'm making about what success looks like. As Minister of Works, I served on many committees on the continent of Africa representing Nigeria. So I got to know that the leaders of Africa from a long time back had tried to connect this continent by road and by rail, apart from the airlines which he talked about. And there's a project called the Trans-African Highway. It contains 9 strategic highways to enable all of us to drive across the continent of Africa. But the instructive thing about those highways is that 3 of them end up in Lagos. out of 9 for the whole of the continent. So the significance of the challenge that Prof was posing in terms of our responsibility is somewhat demonstrated by just this data. That out of 9 Trans-African highways, 3 end up in Lagos. The Algiers-Lagos Highway, the Dakar-Lagos Highway, the Lagos-Mombasa Highway. And it was my lot as minister to do some work on some of these roads. So when Nigeria was building the Abuja-Kano Highway, 365 kilometers, they were contributing their share to the Lagos-Algiers Highway. When Nigeria was building the Lagos-Badagry Expressway, we were contributing our border share of the Lagos-Dakar Highway. And when we were building the bridge connecting us to Cameroon from Cross River, from Mfum, we were actually contributing our share to the Lagos-Mombasa Highway, which is the east-west road of the African continent, if you like. When Nigeria decided to embark on the Kano to Maradi rail line project, they were doing nothing different. They were standing up to be counted for their leadership responsibility. Of course, not a few of us raised questions then. Why are you spending money in another part of the world outside your border? And I think the raison d'etre has somewhat been provided in Prof's speech. But I think that those challenges themselves raise enormous opportunities. And I say the world has changed in a way that the generation that has the fiscal energy to do this work must understand that, as Prof said, instead of lamenting, is to find the opportunities within the definition of what the Nigerian dream looks like, what success looks like, and what good leadership looks like. Because we have had all sorts of leaders, and we seem not to be satisfied with what we have had. And so can we define what the successful leader looks like? So that when we see him, we may recognize him, we may converge around him, so that we will not end up in those afterthoughts sayings, with due respect to the great men and women who said words to this effect like, the best president we never had. So I think it is important to then have resolutions around these very seemingly simple but profound ideas. What is our gold standard for good leadership? What is our definition of success? What is the Nigerian dream? And so I think if we, the movers and shakers of Nigeria, can come to an agreement on those very simple but profound things on this auspicious occasion, perhaps we can then begin to propagate to those who care to listen. Let me close by saying that something is moving, and I think that it is important for us to see it. I've been talking to a generation of people younger than me, and I'm seeing something different from what I saw. So growing up as a teenager, I was socialized on music, dress, food, fashion, and culture that was totally un-Nigerian. And perhaps that is why he asks, who bewitched us? Because we wanted to have Afro that was American, we wanted to have bell bottom, we wanted to listen to music that was from yonder, and all the movies that we watched were either Chinese, Indian, or American. But I think that is changing. That tide is slowly turning. The movies that the generation below us are watching are largely being produced from here. The music they are listening to is not what we listen to. They're listening to the music they are making. The food they are making, I mean, the debate on the continent about whose jollof rice is better is symbolic of the attention we are paying now, not to beef burger and hot dogs, but to indigenous cuisine. And I think that if we look back, not only did my generation consume that culture, we ultimately consumed the finished products that came with it. We consumed their shoes, their clothing, and their electronics. And I see that as that tide is turning, there's a unique opportunity to also now push with our music, our brands, push with our film, our finished products, push with our jollof rice, many finished goods that come from this part of the world. I think I will stop there. Thank you very much.
I think it is